2 years ago, I landed what felt like the opportunity of a lifetime at a mid-sized tech consulting firm. Fresh out of my MBA, I was hired as a senior business analyst with the explicit promise that exceptional performance would lead to a team lead promotion within 18 months. The role came with a 40% salary bump, equity options, and my own team of analysts. I was practically vibrating with excitement. My manager, Sarah, was transparent about the path forward. We have 2 internal candidates being considered for this promotion, you and Mark from the strategy team. May the best analyst win. I appreciated the honesty. Competition breeds excellence, right? Mark Richardson seemed like the ideal colleague from day one. Mid-30s, been with the company for 4 years, and genuinely appeared invested in my success. He'd stop by my desk with coffee, offered to review my presentations, and even invited me to grab beers after particularly brutal weeks. We're both gunning for the same role, he said during one of these hangouts, but that doesn't mean we can't help each other succeed. God, I was naive. The red flags started subtle, the kind you dismiss because they seem too petty to be intentional. Mark would make offhand comments during team meetings like, "Oh, I thought you were handling the Morrison account differently." Interesting approach. Nothing overtly critical, just enough to plant seeds of doubt. Colleagues would occasionally ask me about decisions I hadn't made or timelines I hadn't agreed to, claiming Mark had mentioned them. Then there were the technical hiccups. Files would mysteriously corrupt right before important presentations. Emails would fail to send to crucial stakeholders, forcing last-minute scrambles. My carefully organized project folders would somehow get moved or renamed in our shared drive. Each incident was easily explainable. Technology fails, people make mistakes, but the pattern was starting to feel convenient. The creeping sense of unease really hit when I noticed Mark's uncanny ability to swoop in and save the day. Every time one of my projects hit a snag, he'd appear with solutions, alternative approaches, or connections that could help. "Just want to see the team succeed," he'd say with that practiced smile. Meanwhile, his own project seemed to run with supernatural smoothness. The Morrison account was my make-or-break project, a massive digital transformation initiative for a Fortune 500 client. Landing this successfully would virtually guarantee my promotion. 3 months of intensive work led to what I knew was a brilliant strategy presentation scheduled for a Tuesday morning in October. Monday evening, I stayed late putting finishing touches on the deck. Everything was perfect. The financial models were airtight, the implementation timeline was realistic, and the risk assessment was comprehensive. I went home feeling confident this would seal the deal. Tuesday morning at 8 a.m., I opened the presentation file to review one final time before the 10 a.m. meeting. What I found made my blood run cold. Every single financial projection was wrong. Not slightly off, catastrophically incorrect. The implementation timeline suggested completing an 18-month project in 6 months. The risk assessment downplayed critical security concerns while highlighting minor issues as deal breakers. It was as if someone had systematically replaced every intelligent recommendation with its stupidest alternative. I had exactly 90 minutes to figure out what happened and fix it. Panic mode activated. Frantically checking version history, I discovered the file had been modified at 11:47 p.m. the night before, 3 hours after I'd left the office. The changes were made from my login credentials, which should have been impossible since I was home binge-watching Netflix with my girlfriend at that time. Here's where Mark's helpfulness reached new heights. He knocked on my office door at 8:15 a.m. with coffee and pastries. "Thought you might need some fuel before the big presentation," he chirped. When he saw my obvious distress, his concerned colleague act went into overdrive. "What's wrong? You look terrible." I explained the situation, the corrupted file, the impossible timeline, the technical nightmare. Mark immediately offered to help. "Look, I've been working on similar financial models for the Henderson account. We could adapt those projections, and I have connections at Morrison who might give us insights into their priorities." In my desperation, I almost accepted. Almost. Something about his readiness, the way he had solutions immediately available, the specific knowledge of Morrison's internal priorities that he shouldn't have possessed, triggered every instinct I'd been suppressing for months. Instead of gratefully accepting his help, I made an excuse about needing to call IT first. The moment Mark left my office, I dug deeper into the digital forensics of my corrupted file. What I found next changed everything. The version history showed not just when changes were made, but which specific elements were modified. Someone had methodically gone through every section, replacing accurate data with flawed alternatives. This wasn't random corruption, it was surgical sabotage. More damning, the replacement data perfectly matched preliminary models I'd shared with Mark weeks earlier during one of our collaborative coffee sessions. But the smoking gun was yet to come. Digging through my email archive, I discovered something that made my hands shake with rage. 3 separate complaint emails to Sarah about my unprofessional behavior and concerning work quality. Emails allegedly from Morrison's project stakeholders. Emails I'd never seen before. The complaints were detailed and damaging. One accused me of missing critical deadlines. Another questioned my technical competence. A third raised concerns about my attitude during stakeholder calls. Each email was timestamp stamped over the past 6 weeks, sent to Sarah with CCs to HR. Here's the kicker. I never received copies of these emails. They weren't in my sent folder, my inbox, or my deleted items. According to the email headers, they were sent from Morrison stakeholders I'd never met, using corporate email addresses that didn't exist in Morrison's directory. Someone had fabricated an entire paper trail of complaints to undermine my promotion candidacy. The technical analysis took me 2 hours. Thankfully, my computer science undergrad finally proved useful for something beyond impressing dates. The metadata revealed these emails had been created using an email spoofing tool, routed through a VPN, and sent from an IP address that traced back to our office building. More specifically, it traced back to Mark's workstation. Finding evidence of Mark's sabotage was simultaneously vindicating and terrifying. On one hand, I finally understood why the past 6 months had felt like swimming upstream. On the other hand, I now possessed proof that my trusted colleague had been systematically attempting to destroy my career. My first instinct was to march into Sarah's office and expose everything immediately. Fortunately, my MBA training in strategic thinking kicked in. Accusations without ironclad evidence could easily backfire, especially since Mark had spent months positioning himself as the helpful, collaborative colleague while I'd been struggling with mysterious technical difficulties. Instead, I spent the next week building an unassailable case. First, I consulted with Jake, a friend from college who worked in cybersecurity. Without revealing specifics, I asked him to verify my digital forensics analysis. His confirmation was unequivocal. Someone definitely spoofed these emails, and they were sloppy about covering their tracks. This metadata trail would hold up in court. Next, I discreetly reached out to the Morrison stakeholders who'd allegedly sent the complaint emails. Their responses were consistent. None of them had ever sent complaints about me to my company. In fact, several mentioned being impressed with my professionalism and the quality of my preliminary recommendations. I documented everything. Screenshots of metadata. Timestamped records of file modifications. Written confirmations from Morrison stakeholders. A detailed timeline correlating Mark's helpful interventions with subsequent project difficulties. The final piece of evidence came from an unexpected source, building security. Remembering that my corrupted presentation had been modified at 11:47 p.m. on a Monday, I requested access logs for our office that evening. Company policy required keycard access after 9 p.m., and all entries were automatically recorded. The logs showed only 2 people had accessed the building after 9 p.m. that Monday, the cleaning crew at 10:15 p.m. and Mark at 11:30 p.m. Mark had told everyone he was homesick that day. Armed with comprehensive evidence, I scheduled a meeting with Sarah and requested HR representation. I've discovered some concerning irregularities in project communications and file management that I believe require immediate investigation. The meeting was scheduled for Friday afternoon. I spent Thursday night rehearsing my presentation, organizing evidence, and mentally preparing for the most important professional conversation of my career. Friday arrived with unexpected drama. That morning, Mark approached my desk with obvious excitement. "Hey, I heard through the grapevine that they're making the promotion decision next week. I know we're both in the running, but I want you to know I respect the hell out of your work ethic. May the best candidate win." His performance was Oscar-worthy. The concerned handshake, the direct eye contact, the perfectly calibrated balance of confidence and humility. If I hadn't discovered his systematic sabotage campaign, I might have found his sportsmanship admirable. Instead, I smiled and thanked him for his kind words, all while knowing that in 3 hours, I'd be presenting evidence of his elaborate betrayal to company leadership. The meeting itself was surreal. Sarah's initial confusion gave way to shock, then anger, as I methodically presented each piece of evidence. The HR representative, Jennifer, took copious notes and asked increasingly pointed questions about technical specifics and timeline correlations. "These are serious allegations," Jennifer said after I'd finished my presentation. "If verified, this represents not just sabotage but potential criminal activity, computer fraud, email spoofing, and corporate espionage." Sarah's response was swift and decisive. "We're placing Mark on immediate administrative leave, pending a full investigation. This level of systematic deception violates multiple company policies and potentially several laws." The immediate aftermath was like watching a controlled detonation. Mark was called into Sarah's office at 4 p.m. that Friday. I didn't witness the conversation, but the entire floor could hear raised voices through the conference room walls. 20 minutes later, Mark emerged red-faced and visibly shaken. He grabbed his personal items from his desk, avoided eye contact with everyone, and left the building escorted by security. The office ripple effect was immediate and dramatic. Colleagues who'd witnessed months of Mark's helpfulness and my apparent struggles suddenly saw both in an entirely new context. Conversations stopped when I walked by, not from hostility, but from the awkward recognition that they'd been unknowingly complicit in someone's character assassination campaign. The week following Mark's departure was professionally surreal. Colleagues approached me with a mixture of apology and curiosity, trying to reconcile the narrative they'd believed with the reality they'd just learned. "I can't believe Mark was sabotaging you this whole time," said Lisa from accounting. "I actually defended him when people started questioning his sudden expertise on projects he wasn't assigned to. God, I feel terrible." These conversations were necessary but exhausting. Everyone wanted details, explanations, and reassurance that they hadn't been manipulated too. I found myself repeatedly explaining the timeline of discovery while trying not to sound bitter or vindictive. Sarah handled the transition with impressive professionalism. She scheduled one-on-one meetings with every team member to address concerns, clarify project ownership, and rebuild trust in team dynamics. Her message was consistent. This was an isolated incident of professional misconduct that's been addressed. We're moving forward with renewed focus on transparency and collaborative success. The investigation results came back 2 weeks later. The IT department's forensic analysis confirmed everything I'd documented and uncovered additional evidence I'd missed. Mark had been systematically accessing my files, monitoring my email communications, and even tracking my calendar to time his sabotage efforts. The scope of his surveillance was honestly creepy. More disturbing was the discovery of similar attempts against other colleagues. Mark had been building comparative intelligence on everyone he perceived as competition, gathering ammunition for potential future campaigns. His folder structure, recovered from his workstation, read like a masterclass in workplace espionage. Legal consequences followed swiftly. The company's attorneys recommended pursuing charges for computer fraud and corporate espionage. Mark's employment was terminated for cause, eliminating any possibility of severance or positive references. His professional reputation in our industry was effectively destroyed once word spread through networking channels. The most satisfying vindication came from Morrison themselves. When Sarah briefed them on the situation and showed them my original, uncompromised presentation materials, their response exceeded every expectation. Not only did they approve my proposed strategy, they specifically requested that I personally lead the implementation and expanded the project scope by 60%. 3 months after Mark's departure, I received the promotion I'd been working toward, but it came with unexpected additions. Sarah recommended me for a senior team lead role that included oversight of both business analysis and strategy functions. The position came with the originally promised salary increase plus an additional 15% bonus for exceptional resilience and professional integrity under challenging circumstances. The Morrison Project's success opened doors I hadn't even known existed. Other Fortune 500 clients specifically requested my involvement in their digital transformation initiatives. Within 6 months, I was managing a team of 12 analysts across multiple high-profile accounts. But the most meaningful growth was personal. This experience taught me crucial lessons about workplace dynamics, professional self-preservation, and the importance of trusting your instincts. For anyone facing similar professional betrayals, here are my key takeaways. Document everything. I can't stress this enough. If something feels off, start keeping records. Screenshots, email timestamps, conversation notes, everything. Digital evidence is your strongest protection against manipulation and gaslighting. Trust your instincts, but verify with evidence. That nagging feeling that something wasn't right saved my career. When workplace dynamics feel consistently off, there's usually a reason. Don't dismiss your concerns as paranoia. Build relationships with integrity. Mark's downfall wasn't just the sabotage, it was the web of deception required to maintain his false persona. Authentic professional relationships are more sustainable and ultimately more valuable than calculated networking. Understand the stakes. Workplace competition can bring out the worst in people. The higher the stakes, the more carefully you need to protect your interests. This doesn't mean becoming paranoid, but it does mean being strategically aware. Have allies outside your immediate team. My cybersecurity friend Jake was crucial in verifying my evidence. Maintain professional relationships across departments and companies. You never know when you'll need objective expertise. Know your company's resources. HR exists for situations exactly like this. While not every HR department is equally effective, most companies have strong incentives to address systematic misconduct quickly and decisively. Keep your integrity intact. The temptation to respond to sabotage with sabotage is real. Taking the high road and relying on evidence rather than retaliation ultimately served me better than any revenge scheme could have. Looking back now, almost 2 years later, I'm actually grateful this happened. Not because I enjoyed being systematically undermined, that was genuinely awful, but because surviving and overcoming Mark's campaign taught me resilience, strategic thinking, and professional confidence I wouldn't have developed otherwise. Mark's attempt to destroy my career didn't just fail spectacularly, it accidentally launched me into opportunities one wouldn't have pursued if everything had gone smoothly. Sometimes the universe has a twisted sense of humor. Final update. I heard through industry connections that Mark struggled to find employment for over a year after his termination. Word of his sabotage campaign spread through professional networks, making him essentially unhireable in our field. He eventually relocated to another state and took a significant step down in role and salary. I don't take pleasure in his struggles. Professional destruction is serious business, but I also don't feel guilty about protecting my career and exposing his misconduct. Actions have consequences, and systematic betrayal comes with particularly severe ones. The best revenge really is living well. And getting promoted. Definitely getting promoted. Edit. Holy crap, this blew up. Thanks for all the awards and supportive comments. A few people have asked about specific technical details of the digital forensics. I'm happy to answer what I can, but obviously can't share information that might compromise ongoing legal proceedings or reveal proprietary company processes. Edit 2. To everyone asking if this is real, I understand the skepticism. Workplace drama this dramatic does seem like fiction. Unfortunately, it's very real, and I have the therapy bills to prove it. Professional betrayal messes with your head in ways I hadn't anticipated. Edit 3. Several people have shared similar experiences in the comments. Apparently, workplace sabotage is more common than I realized. Stay vigilant out there, folks. Trust, but verify.